Hello everybody and welcome to the Black Forest. I am here in Germany to drive the Porsche RS Spider, but they said, hey, while you're over here, maybe, you have a little go in 959. And I was like, well, that's okay. I think I could do that. I think I could make the time, So here we are. This is the unbelievable Porsche 959, a car that has somehow in 20 years of doing this evaded me. Never driven a 959 until this morning, and as I will demonstrate, it does not disappoint. This particular 959 is owned by the Porsche Museum, and it has never left Porsche's possession. This car has been with Porsche since new. It is a production car, but a very early one that was kept by the factory for long-term development testing. And by long-term, I mean it has only 19,446 kilometers on it. It is fresh. It's gray with this unbelievable wool interior with this sort of gradient stripe pattern. And it has a sort of experimental leather in it that has metal, like some kind of metallic liquid in the metal, which gives the leather this sort of silvery shine. Pretty wild. The 959 is an incredibly important part of Porsche's history. It was the first all-wheel drive supercar developed from not only Group B rallying, but the Paris to Dakar system. There's so much tech in here that is ahead of its time. It's a 2.8 liter flat six, Motronic injection, air-cooled engine, liquid cool heads. And that came from the 956 race car. It's two turbos, but not twin turbos. They're sequential, and I will demonstrate that. The all-wheel drive system moves power around as necessary, and there's an unbelievable dual gauge setup on the dash here showing what percentage of power is going where. The body is made of aluminum and Kevlar combined. They showed us one of the body mules this morning. It was so amazing. And the floor is made of Nomex. The wheels are magnesium and they are hollow. There were sport and comfort variants. This one is a comfort. The total production was 337 units, which includes 337 prototypes, and then 8 continuation cars produced in 1993 that were made up basically of leftover parts. The historical impact, the cultural impact of the 959 cannot be understated. It was the fastest car in the world, 198 miles an hour at the time. The F40 did beat it eventually, and then the Diablo after that. But in so many ways, for better or worse, as you will see, it's so normal and refined. There's so much to talk about, but let's go for a drive. It's a 6-speed gearbox, but first gear is called the G gear, which stands for Gelände or terrain. It's off-road gear, but it's not really. It's really kind of a regular first gear, as I just learned, because in Switzerland there's a second gear sound test. So rather than making 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they made G 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So second gear was, quote, higher up the range, and the car was a little quieter. But you really do, you kind of dogleg first it most of the time anyway. But just to demonstrate, I'll put it in G, and G, as you pull away, feels like a modern first gear. Kind of short, and now we're in the actual 1 gear, which really feels a lot like second. So there's the second turbo. The first turbo comes on around 2,500 RPM, and then it gives way to the second turbo, which comes on like an afterburner around 5. So there's the first turbo. It's a little damp here, but we are on newish tires. And if I go flat, boom, there's the second turbo at around 4,500 RPM. Ha ha! A lot of things familiar to Porsche people. The cabin, for instance, feels pretty much just like a 911, except for the extra knobs to adjust the adaptive suspension and the height of the car. We're on sport and low right now. 445 horsepower, which in 1986 was a ton. The Countach with 12 cylinders made 444 horsepower. So with half of those cylinders, wow, when the second turbo comes on, that's when the real goodness happens. This center console and shifter will be familiar to those who have driven 964s. It doesn't look like a G-body center console at all. We have to make a little U-turn here. We're just outside of town. I wish I could say I was very familiar with this terrain, but I am not. So, turning radius is all right for an all-wheel drive car. One thing that's kind of unique, the pedal box, it comes in a little bit on the left, so I have to really be careful where I put my clutch foot. So, on the power, first turbo, second turbo. I feel more comfortable going up the hill, hitting that second turbo. Second turbo, wow! Man, when that thing comes on, it's super afterburner-y. Good news, they've got pretty new tires on this car. It's a little damp here in Germany. No problem, though, for the 959 and its incredible all-wheel drive system. The steering is nice, although, of course, as typical Porsches from the era, the wheel doesn't adjust, so it's a little farther away than I'd like. But the seats are really comfortable. Woo! The driving position is great, and this would be a great car to take on a long road trip. I'm on third gear, rolling into the power, in between turbos, and then whee! There goes the second one. Oh wow, that's humming right there. Third gear is crazy long. I think third gear might be longer than in the 718 GT4. Third gear is crazy long in this car. Remember, 200-mile-an-hour car. Those last continuation cars, apparently some of them had a little extra power and could crack 2 bills. It didn't count towards the official testing by then, but they said it could do it. The ride is really good. They also did a whole bunch of aerodynamic work. Obviously, the front air dam and the rear wing are totally different from regular 911s, but they also shaved the roof rails, canted back the headlights. They're much more flush with the front bonnet. And there are all kinds of intakes and extractors to keep things cool. Remember, we have water-cooled heads. I feel like it's a little floaty, which might just mean the shocks are a little tired. I mean, there's only 19,000 kilometers. See, my foot hit the top of the dash there. Other G-body cars, Porsches of this era, that doesn't happen to me. That's a unique to this car. Mentally, I don't want to use the G gear because it seems like not a first gear, but in reality, you pretty much can just use it as a first gear. People have told me not to use it, but I really think as long as you're actually going slow, it's like pretty much fine. Down the hill we go. The response, superb. The smoothness. When I drove the roof Yellowbird, it had sort of a turbine-like quality to it that was really separate from those motorsport grade, raspy, cami air-cooled motors. And this is kind of like that. I can see how these were sort of developed using turbocharged technology of the time. Just fantastic, though. Easy to heel toe. The brake pedal is really, really firm. Really firm. And there is some lag. So wherever you are at the RPM band, when you hit the throttle, you still have to wait a second or so for that boost to really come on. Man, but when that second one hits, whew. Oh yes, fantastic power. And what a nice, refined experience. And I can do a couple thousand miles in this thing, no problem. AC works. Porsche even put that new cool stereo in. What a treat. I'm behind this Forester towing a little U-Haul here. Maybe I'll just come to a stop and make a gap. It idles perfectly smooth. When I sit here idling, there's so few vibrations in the car. But if I don't use the G gear, right, if I just dogleg first, I got to give it a few more revs and a little bit more of a clutch ride than I'm probably used to. If you're pointing the least bit uphill when you start, then you definitely want to use the G gear so you're not like smoking the clutch. Really easy to heel toe. The brake and the gas pedal are placed perfectly. I mean, they're probably just the same pedals out of the regular car. That seems like an easy thing to reuse. Such a fantastic machine. In the same way when you drive a Nissan Skyline GTR and you go, well, that can't be from 1989. That doesn't make any sense. That feels like a much more modern car. This is like that. It has the refinement of like a 993 turbo, which would have been, fully 10 years later in development. But other than that sequential turbo setup, the 993 obviously had the twins, so the power band was different. It was a much flatter power band. This is not a flat power band. It's big power, slight dip, bigger power, and that is absolutely awesome. Yeah, the G gear is really a lot like what first gear would be in a modern car. Well, before we end this video, we're going to do a first gear pull from 3. Here we go. Turbo 1, Turbo 2, Turbo 1, Turbo 2, Turbo 1. The hardest thing about this car is that it's so valuable because you just want to send it. I want to send it, but it's like $2 million plus, and I can't escape that. But man, do I understand why people pay all the money for these. That is, I don't want to say it was ever a mystery of the universe, because the car, its history, its low production, its advanced technology, all the things that make it special, you go, yeah, of course. That's why it's crazy expensive. But now that I have the impressions of driving it seared into my brain, now there's another reason. Woo! Now it's not just a collectible. Now it is one of the great driver's cars. And I get that. Now, are there downsides? Sure. My friend Jeff Zwart had one of these. Bought it when they were still reasonably priced. And I don't mean cheap, I just mean reasonable. Sold it when they were very valuable. And said even then, he somehow lost money on it because they are horrifyingly expensive to maintain. Even more expensive to maintain than a Carrera GT. So think about that. The maintenance on these is ridiculous and not for the faint of heart. And so to that degree, when I say it's normal for better or worse, like my Countach, yes, the maintenance is insane, but the experience of driving it is so overwhelming. It's all consuming. It's beyond insane. Whereas this is brilliant and rewarding and does not disappoint at all. But to sit here, and after a while, it probably does feel kind of normal, for better or worse. Now, that may be great if you want to put a ton of miles on a car, road trip it, or really connect with this advanced technology from the 1980s. But if you want to snap necks and all that, if you want to be the winner, then it's a lot of money to buy and a lot of money to keep going. But as an experience, holy shnikes. If I can implore you to drive somebody else's at least once or twice in your life, you will not forget it, because it's incredible. Shout out to Porsche for letting me have a go. Just an incredible experience. I'm sorry this video is kind of stripped down. I have a very short period of time to drive this car. I didn't have time to do all the drive-bys and stuff, but I wanted to share my time behind the wheel of a 959 with you guys, and I hope it's been rewarding, because it was for me. Bye.
And remember, always fight your tickets. Use code TST10 on the Off the Record app, available in the Android and iOS store, or go to offtherecord.com/TST.